Good evening, everyone. Jeff, it's so good to see you, sweetheart.
So good to see you too.
Well, listen, all right, class is in session, but then again, we know that class is always in session. And I always say, do what you can, when you can, for whom you can. Uh, that spirit of generosity. And having just come within a hair's breadth of having this home devastated by Hurricane Helene. It scooched a little to the east of us, and 25 miles from here is still under 40 feet of standing water, where Six Flags over Georgia used to be.
Mm.
5 miles away is, the water is up over the tops of school buses and large huge container units, and I mean it's the flooding has been unbelievable. But one of my favorite places on earth, Asheville, is gone.
Yeah.
It's it will never ever be the same. It can be rebuilt, but for all intents and purposes, that town that I loved and took my mom to several times is gone.
Mm.
And Christine and I have been thinking, what can we do? What can we do? And I was on my way back from Hi Sweetheart. That's my Jonathan. So, yes, of course we've contributed. Yes, of course we've done, whatever we could. All of our neighbors got together and I mean, everybody's doing everything that they can to help these poor, unfortunate people. Thank you, Melissa. Hello, darling. Um, and anyway, Chris and I were on the way back from the hospital. I had an appointment for this. Um, and she's like, "Can I just stop for just 1 second at Goodwill?" Um, and we had already offloaded a bunch of stuff after mom passed away, some things that nobody else in the family wanted that were, so we loaded the car up over the course of a couple of weeks, a couple of times, and brought some things over to Goodwill. It's right here in town. It's a beautiful facility, very well kept. And Chris walked in to get a bowl to feed her kitty out of because she had broken the previous bowl, and the cat won't eat out of any other bowl that's a different shape than the one that she had, which was kind of a soft round, no edges or anything. And so she has stopped and stopped and stopped, and she went in and she found the damn bowl.
Hmm.
Or a duplicate of it. And she was so excited. And she comes running out to the car and says, "I found the bowl," and a really great dining room set.
Hmm.
So she's like, "Okay, you have to come in." It's pouring. It's the back ass end of the hurricane. It was 650 miles long that came through here, so it rained for 3 or 4 days. We got 18 to 20 inches of rain. We were so blessed that it did not decimate this property or this home.
Yeah.
Our neighbor lost her roof. I mean, it was a big deal. And so I went in and I saw the set and I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because the one we had was just too big for the dining area. And you had to walk sideways to get around to go, I mean, it was just like, no. So she'd had the other set, kind of a country kitchen set, for about maybe 6 years. And so she put it on Marketplace on Facebook right away. And we got the set that they had at the Goodwill, perfect condition, $70. Perfect condition. 4 chairs, table. And so we had to break down the other set that had 6 chairs and it folded down on the side and all of that. And we moved that into this room, the parlor. Well, it took over the room. And so she put it on Marketplace and a woman called and she said, we have friends in Asheville, and they lost everything, everything. And they had like a spare, touches my heart. They had like a spare guest house on their property. And they went up to Asheville and they gathered their family of friends and brought them to Atlanta. And they were trying quick like a bunny to furnish this house for them. They had literally nothing but the clothes on their backs.
Wow.
And when Christine heard that, she said, "Oh, okay, come and get it. Yours, free to a good home. Take it."
Hmm.
And they came today and they picked up the set and they were so thrilled to be able to do this for those people. But we were more thrilled. Christine was more thrilled to be able to give away something that has been well loved and eaten at by our whole family over the years, mom's chair, mom's, and to pass that on with heart is so important.
Yeah.
And, that's really what it's all about. The gift and the giver and what we can do for each other. And last weekend, was it last weekend?
The event?
Yeah.
It was 2 weekends ago.
2 weekends ago, yes.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like it, but it was.
I know, it's shocking. But we couldn't do the show live because you were really kind of in my place at the UFO Contact in Houghton Lake, Michigan. And Deb and RJ are the producers, the promoters, and Mike Smith, of course, too, that do this. And I couldn't go, but I came in this way because we have the technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to share that experience with our viewers tonight. So without further ado, I would like to introduce two of the finest human beings that I know, with the biggest hearts and the most generous spirits, Deb and RJ DeRoos. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
We're honored.
We're honored, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
You're more than my friends. You are so much more than my friends.
We are family, no doubt.
We are. And I know, because Deb, you called me after we did our thing, and we're going to spend the next hour talking about this, but you called me and you were like, Jeff blew it out of the freaking park. Candace, hi, darling. Oh, I should have known Candace would be here and Maria's here. Oh, hi, sweetheart. Mwah. And, I really did think, Jeff's there for me, like physically there for me. I know, Candace, I heard all about it. Oh, my God.
He rocked it.
Yeah. So I'm going to just let you talk about what Jeff did, and then we'll talk about what we all did together.
Well, I'll tell you, Jeff's presence can be felt throughout that whole entire, not even the building, just that whole area. When he came in, I swear he came in the front door and we're up on the second floor. I knew he was there way before I saw his face. I could feel that love. And, it was so wonderful to see him. But, I was telling him after he spoke, there's two Jeffs. I love them both equally.
Yes, there is. You're right.
But there's this very soft, loving, kind, warm, compassionate man who, he welcomes you to come talk to him, and he's soft-spoken, and he's, I want to say godly. Godly. Just very, it's the love. It truly is.
And it is a divine presence in my life.
Yeah.
Jeff,
so
you are a divine presence in my life.
Yeah.
It's funny that you said there was two Jeffs, because I noticed, I think Jeff freaked out Jeff on stage. He was so into it. He was like, whoa, what's going on here? Who is this guy speaking? So
Yeah.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah, I noticed that. So
I would assume probably every time that you step in front of people, that other person, and it's not another person, it's you, but it's that passion and that love and that.
yeah.
Yeah. So I say there's this meek and mild, loving Jeff, and then there is this powerful, amazing force. He's a force, and even without knowing the words that he had to say, which were very powerful, his presence on that stage and the love and passion he radiated. That Jeff, you had everybody's hearts and ears and minds within a second.
Yeah.
It was remarkable. And that is something I have to say that we see every year with Andrea. So, that's one of the biggest compliments anybody can get.
Everyone was on the edge of the seat for sure.
Yeah. He was remarkable.
It's the most important thing, because once you have someone's attention, once they hear you, it doesn't matter if they agree or they disagree. It opens up an engagement and interaction and a communication that we all strive to have with the universe. But it is most profound when it's physically one vessel to another, making that kind of contact at an event like that is structured entirely. I mean, it has structure, and yet it also feels very free floating. It feels, it's so spiritual. Poor Lenny and Jeff every year. I mean, Lenny's like, oh God, I forgot to get one of those arm bracelets, the squeegee cords where I can just attach it to you. And because I get lost in that building every time that I'm there, because I'm not in 3D. And I know that building from one end of it to the other, every floor. And yet I get lost every single year. So this year I couldn't get lost because I was sitting here coming in on the computer. And it was so wonderful to have that interaction with the audience too.
Yeah.
Whoever, I can't remember his name, who did the tech work.
That's our son-in-law, Andy.
Andy did it. Yes. Bless his heart. Please thank him in case I neglected to thank him for what he did.
You did.
Okay, good. I was so excited to do it. And I knew what Jeff was going to talk about, and he knew what I was going to talk about. And in a way, I feel like we channeled each other, even though we appeared at different times.
Yeah.
He got what was my original slot, and I moved to Friday, and was one of the openers. I think I was one of the opening of the presentations. Yeah. And Tim, oh my God. I was like, how am I supposed to do what I'm supposed to do when this man that I love so much is up on that stage getting all choked up and crying because I'm not there and he's worried about me? Right. It was so tender, and there was so much compassion and so much emotion that even though this is the farthest away that I have ever been from UFO contact, I felt the closest. Yeah. I felt like I was there. And then when everybody went out that night and you called me and we made the circle and the bowls, and talk about that. And Jeff, talk about your experience that weekend too, because I know that it profoundly touched you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did. Do you want me to go first?
It's up to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I wanted to say what an honor it has been to, I guess this was the third one I've spoken at now. I missed last year, so there was a gap there, but what an honor it's been. It's truly been the highlight of my year. I have not taken as many speaking engagements the last year or so, as I've been kind of trying to focus more on writing. But this was one there's no way I wasn't making room for it. It's truly a highlight on my calendar. And so for one, thank you for having me. It's an honor. And Andrea, I did feel in some way like I was kind of like your emissary in some way, you know what I mean? But you were totally there yourself. Your presence was there. Because events like this, there's different pieces that you can take in and out, like different speakers that can kind of be there and not there. But there are certain ones that are just integral to the whole structure. And I really feel your presence is one of those. And your presence was definitely felt, but you also could definitely feel that there's a difference between the physical presence and the spiritual presence. So I could tell that physically you weren't there, because when you walk in a room, as far as I'm concerned, even if, the first time I met you personally, and we had met over the phone and this way long before we met personally, but it was like when you walked in the room, I was kind of like, did like Oprah just walk in or something, or like the president? Because it's almost like you feel the buzz that like a celebrity just walked in the room, even if it's not the actual buzz of chatter. You just are like, somebody important is here, And so there you are an entourage in and of yourself, and you carry something very well. You have an entourage that follows you as well. So I mean, that's part of what you feel when you walk in the room. But I also kind of felt in some way like I was there for you, and that was an honor to do that. And I too kind of felt like what you said, we in some ways channeled one another, in some way. And I don't know how all of that works and functions, but I definitely felt that. And I just want to say one of the things that I talked about in my talk, which I talked about a lot of things. I tend to cram a lot into 45 minutes to 1 hour. That's why you learn to talk really fast. I used to say I can preach a 2.5 hour sermon in like 45 minutes. And that's just why I learned to talk really fast. But one of the things that I talked about was the fact that when we're at a point when the binaries, whatever they are, this thing versus that thing, becomes so exaggerated and pronounced that it feels as though the fabric of reality itself is about to tear, which that sensation is palpable in the air right now, wherever you go, whether it's over, whatever it's over, whatever the issue, that sense is everywhere. But that whenever that happens, there is a principle called the law of three. There's something that happens where a third force arises, and it's an anomalous force that appears in order to unite the two forces that are going to undo one another, right? And cause a cataclysm. And, I learned this principle through my own experiences that happen to coincide with things I've seen in the sky. And it's kind of over the years, one of the way I think spirits helped me piece the narrative together was through those experiences and then learning these principles. But third force is that thing that emerges. It's like what Paul says when he says in his letter to the Galatians, he's like, hey, when we come together, there's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female, slave nor free. We're all one in Christ. And to me, that's that third force law where he's like, when we come together and there's these binaries present that culturally to him were at odds with each other, he's like, the third force, which is the Christ principle, arises and it does away with the binaries and it unites these three things now as one new thing. So it's not two separate entities and then the Christ force over here. It's one single entity now called the body of Christ, which is the mystical language scripture uses. And I use the analogy of the braid. When you take three strands, you need three strands to create a braid. But once the braid is made, you no longer refer to it as three strands. You refer to it as a braid.
Singularity. Yes.
Exactly. It's now a new thing. So when third force arises and joins the binaries, something new is created. This event is itself a third force phenomenon. And events like this are third force phenomenons in people's lives, where even just the binaries of daily life, of the passion I have versus what I have to do to keep the lights on and the lunch is packed, that sort of the tedium and the minutia of daily life that really sometimes kills people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Events like this are themselves anomalous phenomenon that emerge in people's lives that just bring everything together, and my whole mission, anything I do in life is all about that. That's really the core of it all, is I want to help people unite the things in their life that are supposed to come together, but aren't. And that's my goal. And that's why I bring religious language to bear on things still, is because The real purpose of religion isn't to tear apart. Religion in Latin is religare, which means to bind together.
Bind together.
The real purpose of all spiritual language, whatever the tradition, is to create a force that brings disparate elements together so that you can call it one thing instead of many things that are becoming so distant from one another that they're threatening to decompose. And, you know, that's my whole goal. In events like this, that's what they do.
Yeah.
They draw a border around the elements of people's lives that are drifting apart and threatening to drift so far apart that the person loses themselves. And then an event like this happens, and you're with people of like mind. Maybe not even necessarily, you didn't even know they were of like mind until you got there. And then you're like, oh, and you find your people. And it isn't even always that you have this, because there's a great mixture of people there. And I kind of
very eclectic mix of people. Yes. It's amazing.
And some people
we all have that one thing in common.
Yes. Yep. And then there's people who are more on the paranormal side. There's people like everybody. There's everybody I talk to. It's a little different, but there is this union around this belief that there's something out there that we're all trying to name and figure out and lasso with consonants and vowels, and all failing miserably at doing, but we're having a damn good time doing it, trying to do it. And you know what I mean? I don't know. It just, for me, it is that as well. It's just such a, it brought, so I don't know. I'm still reeling from the experience of it myself. Just because
so am I.
And
so is Deb, and so is RJ, because it creates a shift. Every year it creates a shift. And it's interesting too, because I think that we get too caught up in the vernacular, in the language that we try to impose on something that is actually, Deb, you and I have talked about this, I don't know how many times, about imposing the language, the vernacular, the new age, the whatever onto it, when we're really talking about exactly the same thing. Which is why I titled tonight's show, To Whom It May Concern, because it really is a love letter, not only to each other and our interaction with each other, but to the universe. And if we interact, if we are a part of, whether you call it God or prime creator or source energy or Yahweh or whatever you call it, it's the same thing. And if we are an expression of its creation, then we are necessarily a part of it, which is why I know I talk to Deb, and I talk just about every day. And she gets me on. I had a couple of rough days this week, and she gets me right back on track and just says, okay, just, reestablish your connection. And playing my bowls and getting the frequency up, the vibration up. I had an hours and hours long download that started about 10 o'clock last night. And after 2 kind of rough days, this morning I woke up as though I was a completely new person, as though I had been healed from within. But it's great to talk about source energy, but I'm not willing to outsource my healing. I want that process to be, I'm responsible for my own participation in it. This isn't a barter system. This isn't, begging the universe, whomever we're talking to and engaging with, to do something for us. My idea of prayer and meditation is to braid with, and it's interesting that the Pope Francis yesterday released something that I found very interesting. And I don't know why his stuff pops up in my news so frequently, but it does. I think because my phone listens to me talking about subjects like this, it goes, oh, the Pope wrote something about this. And so it popped up yesterday and I read it, and he was talking about exactly what you're talking about, exactly what Deb and RJ are doing with this event. And that is to not draw in, but to acknowledge the presence of a great spirit, a Holy Spirit, a divine tapping into that goes on between us as human beings, but also is an expression of God consciousness. Or
call it a divine science, a divine presence, a Christ consciousness, whatever.
Call it whatever.
Yeah, you notice you've been to enough of these conferences that we put on that it just all ties in. It just all connects together. No matter what everybody's talking about, it might be different, but somehow it comes together and it means one thing.
Yep.
And that's, we're there for a reason. We're there to love, and we're there to realize that there's something going on that we all want to know what's going on, and we ought to be a part of it. So
yes,
that's amazing.
Yeah. And I find the thing that I found amazing participating in it myself is how this event in particular, and typically I'm at churches, typically I'm at or like Bible colleges or places like that. I can't get away with talking there the way I talk at this conference. So that's why I love this conference so much, because I get to talk about the things I really want to talk about.
Anything you want to, and they all get it.
Yes.
Great.
Yep. But is that for me, it actually is one of the things that helped me put the pieces together of my own calling, because I came to a point where I was pretty frustrated with my calling, you know what I mean? And was like, does that even mean anything?
Yeah.
Do I have a calling? Is anyone called to anything? You know what I mean? I came to a point where I was thinking like that, because I kind of came to the point where I was like, the church really seems to have rejected what it is I'm trying to bring to the table, or at least the part of the church that I come from. Kind of for the most part, I find myself more among the outcasts of Christianity, who kind of, that's where they come from, but they're not really interested anymore. And but then that's not really it's a group, but it's not really a group. You know what I mean? I'm kind of like, well, what am I even really called to do? And, I heard as I was mowing the lawn one day, like my best downloads and revelations always come while push mowing the lawn. It's like that.
Dishes, when I'm doing the dishes.
Yeah. It's got to be something about that kind of like that white noisy kind of thing. And, you get these whatever. And
the Sisyphean tasks of life, free our minds.
Yep. And I was like kind of just groaning in my spirit, like just upset really almost. And just like, what am I even called to? And I heard this instantly: you're called to be a gatherer of fragments. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but it sure sounds cool. We'll figure it out. But, but this is one of the things that kind of helped put those pieces together for me, is that, that is my calling, because there are all these fragments of my own soul that are like Jesus-y, paranormal-y, UFO. There's all these interests. They seem like they don't go together at all. But when you bring them together, again, it's like the braid. Now something completely new emerges that wasn't there before. And that's what this event really helped me do. It really helped me see an aspect of my calling that I had no clue that this would ever be anything that I was doing. And, I often think, like, if you take a car, right, and let's say you break you take the side view mirror off and you lay it next to it, you can still look at it and identify it as a car. The pieces are still close enough together that you still look at it and you think car. Break the other side view mirror off, still a car. Strip everything, disconnect every single part of it, but leave it exactly in the pattern of a car. You still look at it and say car. But you move those pieces a mile apart from one another, you don't think car anymore, because the pieces are scattered and fragmented, and none of those pieces anymore serves the larger purpose of car. But it's the notion of car as a concept that binds those disparate pieces into what we think of when we say car. It's the concept of car that brings the fragments together into oneness. but the more disconnected they are, that disconnectedness and deconstruction, which could be just a part of regular maintenance, but if they separate too far from one another, it becomes decomposition and you lose the thing, right? And so I think we all have these aspects of ourselves that are so separated from one another that we lose ourselves. We don't know really what we are, because I've got this deep interest in religion and philosophy, but then I have this deep interest in the paranormal and the ufological, and I grew up in a house that was for all suits and purposes haunted. It's like, how do these things fit together? I have no idea. And now I'm seeing, oh yeah, they're all coming into this mandalic wholeness. And it's like, the more people I talk to, even at events like this, the more people I meet who are like, yeah, man, I had this experience. I had a deep faith, but I had this experience, and I kind of thought I can't continue on with the deep faith thing because it's contradicted by this experience. But what you said helped me realize I can hold on to both. And in fact, it's the holding on to both that really makes the whole picture full. And I mean, I don't know. So for me, even, I don't know, I went off on a long tangent there, but the event itself, the event is really something that helped me and my relationship with you as well, Andrea. It's really one of the things that, despite 20 years of training and pastoring and all this other stuff, it was encountering this, anomalous phenomenon that is this whole world that really helped me put those fragments together in my own life. And now I understand, I don't say I fully understand, but I understand more now what it is I'm called to do, which is to help people find these pieces of themselves that are so scattered that they've lost themselves, gather them together, and realize you are a whole person, not this shattered and scattered thing that can't reconnect and reconstitute itself. So I don't know.
Well, Deb and RJ are both, and since I've known them for God, probably a decade or more, I found them both to be spiritually connected in a very ethereal way. And we've had discussions, even before I met you, Jeff. We've had discussions, group talks, and I've had them on the show a number of times. And we've, gone into this whole idea of, our acceptance and our willingness to be respectful of other people's experiences and their conclusions that they've drawn for themselves.
Yeah.
None of us ever preach in terms of trying to convince anyone of anything, because it is our personal experiences and our personal contact that it was kind of the seed that birthed UFO contact. I mean, it went from idea to reality in the blink of an eye, because it was supposed to. It was a message that Deb got. That didn't you tell RJ we have to do this? When you had just come off of a whole series of things, and he's like, we have to do what exactly?
I wanted to, but I thought we were so exhausted. How are we going to do this? But made one phone call, and boom, there it was.
Well, I knew that it was Spirit Galactic led, because it was not a thought that came through. It was never anything in my brain that, I want to do a UFO conference. And we were talking, and it was the end of our busy paranormal season. And he said, I'm so glad the season's over. We need this break. And I looked at him and said, but we're going to put on a UFO con. And we were both stunned.
I've been having experiences like you, Andrew, all my life. And when I first met Deb, we didn't talk much UFOs. And she had her experience that one night, and she was terrified and didn't like it at first. And I was thinking, thank you for doing that, because now I could talk too. So but once that happened, and it happened for a reason, she she opened up to a totally new, not that she wasn't there, but she opened up to a totally different new world that was amazing and wonderful. And she was on board, literally. And so here we are. And it's been fantastic thanks to you guys and everybody that's involved. And without you, without the people, this does not happen. So,
yeah. And I really, I totally believe that because we allow spirit, we don't try to control this.
Mhm.
It's like when I knew Andrea had to be there and I just call her up and kind of con her into coming. But most of the people,
yeah.
I just basically had this knowing, or RJ had a knowing, this person belongs here. And we went with it. And every one of those people that were supposed to be there were there. And then we've had instances where somebody didn't show up. And later we realized they weren't supposed to be there.
Right.
But that's the whole, like this year, Jeff had already been asked to be there before you were sick, Andrea. But when you and I decided you couldn't be there, it wasn't really a thought. All of a sudden I knew, okay, Andrea's presence has to be throughout the weekend, not just late on Saturday. So I swapped the two of you for that reason, because they were telling me your presence had to be felt all weekend. And Jeff was ready to bring it home in your spot on Saturday. So it always works as long as it's done that way. It's hard for us to even see it truly as a conference because it is so spirit and galactic run.
It's different.
It's really so much more than that. You got to call it something. So that's perfectly reasonable. But in a way, it really is a spiritual retreat. Right. My spiritual connection is with the galactic family. And we've talked about this a lot too. Jeff and I have as well on Soul School is, what's your idea of prayer? One of the things that I've always found fascinating, Mother Teresa, right up until the day she died, had doubts because she couldn't believe that there was a creator so benevolent that the amount of suffering that she witnessed in her lifetime even existed on this planet. And so she was a doubter. And in what I was reading from Pope Francis yesterday, doubt, as I've always believed, is integral to the process of faith. Yeah. Faith, by its own definition, cannot exist with certainty.
Exactly.
There has to be that little, what am I worshiping? Who? Is this an entity? Is this energy? Is this, if the universe is all one thing, if, we're all created from source energy, what part do we play? Who do we beseech? When we reach out, when we want to communicate, if we're already a part of it, aren't we technically talking to ourselves? I mean, these are all legitimate questions to ask. The thing that I love most about UFO contact is that you can ask those questions and you can interact with the people who are there and literally see minds opening, like literally watch people's eyes pop and they hear something that makes them think an entirely different way about something that they thought that they already comprehended to a point, at least.
Yeah.
But now here's another perspective. And I think it's interesting that Jeff talked about his message and his mission being putting all of the pieces together. Because when I think of something that's been shattered or fractured and is scattered around, I think of a kaleidoscope and all the beautiful colors that are just everywhere, like the pieces of a car that are all split up and you can't identify what the car is from that one piece. But when you take all these beautiful colored fragments of glass and put them together, they create a kaleidoscope, which actually, once viewed through, creates a tapestry of every color that the human eye can process.
Yeah.
And so that everything becomes one thing.
Yeah.
And it seems to function as a metaphor for not only that event, with, you know, that the fragments of all the different people that are drawn to this. That's why during my lecture I was talking about, I think, I'll just paraphrase if I recall, you know, let this, if nothing else, let this be your weekend where you are liberated. Let this be the weekend when you are free to speak your truth. You know, and I asked the audience, I said, you know, when you go back to your real jobs on Monday, and somebody says, oh, what'd you do this weekend? How are you going to answer that question?
Right.
Are you going to answer that question? Oh, I got together with a bunch of friends and we all hung up out at Houghton Lake. Or are you going to say, I went to a UFO conference and I had the best fucking time of my life. Oh my God, the people that came to this and all the different ideas and all the love and the energy and the, what kind of courage does it take to speak your truth when you're talking about something that's so out there?
And the thing about it too is, you say it and you think you're going to be rejected. You think somebody's going to think you're strange.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, when I have conversation, maybe even like 9.99999 times out of 10, when I talk to people about this stuff, their eyes get wide as saucers. They sit forward and they're like, tell me more. And then I tell them more and they're like, okay, well, I've never told anybody this, but
I had an experience.
And,
yes, exactly.
And even when they're just like, and I, you know, honestly, till you started talking about it, I had kind of filed it away, but it had always been there under the surface. So many people out there have had experiences like this that are like, they're like windows into a whole new reality for people that have kind of remained unclicked and kind of dragged into the corner of their desktop. Because
filed under unexplained.
Yes, because they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
You know, they don't know what to do with it. They feel like they have to hide it, whether because they're a super rational person and this kind of thing doesn't happen to super rational people, or they're a super religious person and this contradicts my worldview. And it's like, the first year I was there, I met a man. I didn't really know, I knew you, but I didn't know too many other people. And I kind of felt I was kind of getting used to it still, you know what I mean? Because it was my first time in an event like that. And I loved it. I was having a great time, but I was kind of sitting in the back row observing. And then I started talking with a couple of gentlemen in front of me, because I think that first year I was like the last talk of the day. So I kind of sat through the whole thing before I talked. And I talked to 2 gentlemen in front of me, and they were like, oh yeah, we're here. They're like, yeah, we've never really been to anything like this, or never been to this particular event. But they said, we saw the thing about theology and UFOs, and that one sounded interesting. And they didn't know I was the guy who was going to be talking about that. And I was like, yeah, no, and that sounds pretty interesting to me too. I hope the guy
interesting.
Like,
yeah.
I hope the guy has something good to say. I don't know.
And then I'll go up
Never
on
heard of
stage.
him. But then the guy started telling me his story, and he's like a licensed psychologist, a brilliant guy, who on the eve of his father's funeral was driving through the town I grew up in on the road that the church I grew up going to, that my dad pastored, is on, and it's not a very big road. And he said, I had an encounter that night that changed my life. I've never really told anybody about it, and every now and then I come to things like this to sort of think it through, you know? And I remember I was myself dealing with kind of feeling like I was at my dad's funeral symbolically. My father's alive. I love my father. My father's the greatest example I've ever had in my life. And he's the best of the best when it comes to Christians of that variety. We don't agree on everything theologically, but I don't care. But I kind of felt like I was needing to, it kind of hurt a little bit to move past some of those beliefs because I so love my father and I want to honor him. And I don't want him to feel as though I'm dishonoring how he raised me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I kind of felt like I was in that process myself of mourning that aspect, that the loss of that. And the fact that I meet this man who has credentials that instantly kind of made my ears perk up, you know, and be like, this guy is, you know what I mean? He's got, you know what I mean?
Well educated,
he's
knows
even
what
there
he's talking about.
and
Yeah.
he's even there himself kind of sheepish, you know what I mean? And then he had his encounter on the eve of his father's funeral on the road where the church my dad pastored that I grew up going to for 13 years is located. That's an integral part of my history. I was like, all right, man, somebody's talking to me, you know? And it really, the whole thing was just this mind-blowing coming together of fragmented pieces. And I think that's, like you were saying, the fragments coming together and all that kind of thing. I have a talk I give sometimes, and it's a chapter in a book I'm writing right now called Altars and Altars, and I spell it altars with an E and altars with an A. And altars with an E, that's what people who have DID experience, where they have alternate personalities, where the one mind splits into several that are unique entities, right? But it's really one mind that manifests itself as these unique, really individuals that almost
personalities. Yep.
Very much so. And an altar with an A is obviously, it's a holy place. It's a person. It's where a person touches the numinous somehow. And somehow in the divine mind, the singularity, we start with divine oneness, right? And then that oneness explodes outward in the Big Bang, right? And now you have divinity everywhere. But divinity everywhere can be almost like divinity nowhere because it's scattered or it's everywhere. It's kind of like dandelions that are everywhere, so we don't appreciate them. But the rose, because we have to cater to its every whim, we cherish, right? But the dandelion we don't because it's so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
So the divine that's everywhere like that, it begins to congeal in spots, in altars, and people begin to experience it, whether it's Yahweh on the backside of the desert, or whether it's someone on a psilocybin mushroom trip, or someone taking ayahuasca in South America, or someone encountering Shiva or whatever. People begin to have these experiences with the divine, and these altars manifest themselves as altars within the larger divine mind, right? But then as you go through history, all of those things, I think they're all coming together, and we're seeing it now in statements like what Pope Francis made, where he essentially said, it's all one thing. It's got a lot of different names, and but it's all one thing. That's kind of the coming together where the mind that is fragmented, the walls begin to come down and it begins to become one mind again.
Yeah. It's in the congealing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love so much about this event, is that it's like the valley floor of wildflowers, and you can pick this one and pick that one and pick that one, and you bring it all together, and it creates this magnificent explosion of fragrance, a bouquet that is unique unto itself.
Yep.
Because of the choices that you made, the colors that you combined, the fragrances as they meld.
Yep.
It's like a beautiful recipe in a bunch of wildflowers. And that's how I see the people that come to contact.
Oh, yeah.
That each one has blossomed into this most magnificent specimen. And then we all come together and we create our own bouquet. And it is an intoxicating combination of remarkable people.
Well, I can say firsthand, I worked 34 years in a factory, and I put every part you can imagine on a car. So I know that everything comes together, and at the final end, it's a beautiful car. But when I was 5, I was seeing little shadows walking around my room, and I was hearing voices, not with my ears. They were talking to me in my mind. But back then, in the late 50s and early 60s, if I would have said anything, I would have put away. part of my brain would have been taken out, and they would have given me a drug just so I'd sit there all day and not think about anything. So we've come very far.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Deb, once she had her experience, she's starting to remember all her childhood stuff too. That she's been in contact for a long time. But that's the beauty of it. Now we can come out and we can talk about this in a platform that really is disclosure. You know?
Yes, it really is disclosure. And as I said during my lecture, the government can't tell us anything.
No.
They can't, because if they make one singular admission, it's Pandora's box. If this is true, everything is true.
Right.
And so that is why they count on us to do it. They count on us to desensitize people, to take away that fear factor, to talk about, contact is all about the superpower of love. There is no place for fear when we come together. None. And that's why when I do what I do outside, I tell the group before I even start, if you're not ready, go to the bar. If you're not ready for this, because you are going to be impacted by this in a way that changes everything. And even if you don't, quote unquote, see something with your own naked eye that night, you're going to go through your photographs and you're going to see something that decided that it was your turn for it to be in your phone. And here you go. Ask Tenny the pictures that I have shown him that I took as stills, that when I show them to him, they move.
Right.
Including I was practically in Amy Bruni's lap on an airplane one day. Something told me to take my camera and point it out that window. And I crawled right on top of that woman and just held it up and went click, click. And then I sat back down and let her breathe, because I had pretty much collapsed her lungs. And I opened it and I showed it. And I took that picture as a still. It was a still. When I showed it to John Tenney, that object came right up to the side of the plane and then shot away. I didn't do that.
Right.
They did that.
Right.
And when you say shit like that to people, they're like, oh, come on.
Right.
It is our job and our connection with our cosmic family, our galactic family, the entities, the beings. I was just watching a thing about the Nephilim, and how many references there are in the Bible to extraterrestrial beings.
Right.
It's absolutely amazing. I watched this documentary the other day because, what have I got to do except lay around and, heal and save my own life. But my immediate thing was, I have to send this link to Deb. I have to send this link to RJ. I have to send it to Jeff. I have to send it. And the reason is because it brings us this information, brings us more into that sacred space and that mindset where we've got this thing now to discuss. Let us discuss amongst ourselves and then share it with others, because I wrote my books. It took 7 years to tell our family story, almost as long as we lived at the farm.
Right.
I didn't know what would come of that when I did it. I was compelled to do it. And the greatest gift that has come from finding the courage to tell a true story that is in many ways quite literally unbelievable was to just go ahead and tell it. And over all these years, I have discovered how many people it liberated to speak their own truth, to tell their own stories, to share with someone that they trusted, that they deemed trustworthy enough not to belittle them or ridicule them, but to listen to them. That is disclosure. We are all a part of it, RJ. I absolutely agree with you.
Now, you, Andy, do you remember the gentleman got up, was last year or
I think it was 2
years
years
ago,
ago.
and he was 70 years old. He never told a story. Remember that?
Yep.
And he was like elated. So we were at Michigan Paracon this year, and I was talking to one of the employees there that was waiting for us to get, he was watching people coming in and going and packing their cars. And I told him we have this conference on. He says, really? And he's man, I've had a lot of experiences, and I'd really love to go. So lo and behold, he shows up.
Wow.
And I heard that he broke down and he had to leave. I think he was elated or happy, whatever, but I have not had a chance to talk to him again. But I need to talk to this guy because he was just so emotionally. Did you hear about that, Jeff? That guy that broke down?
No.
So I don't know his name. I know what he looks like. He's about 6'4". So, but yeah, I want to talk to him and see what happened there. But yeah, the emotions of the things that people hold in, and all of a sudden they can come out and say this and release it and feel comfortable around talking to people that they're everybody's on the same page.
Just going into a community
Yeah.
of like-minded individuals is in its own respect a light bulb going off that might as well be a Klieg light.
Right.
All of a sudden you go from living in like the chicken and the egg. You're living inside your little 3D egg, and he had the courage to poke his way through and find his way to that event, and it cracked it wide open. And so, yeah, I mean, my first year that I went out and I did what I do, I didn't know, I must have had maybe a dozen or 24 people with me, and the sky just filled and all of the stuff was happening, and people were hearing music and seeing lights, and somebody saw something like come inside me and not leave. And they were freaking out about that. And this man walked over to me, and he was in his 70s, and he just wrapped his arms around me and started to sob. And when he finally was able to compose himself and catch his breath, he leaned over into my ear and he said, "I've waited my whole life for this night."
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And that's what contact is all about. It really is. It is all of us with everything making contact and
with each other and the universe. Yeah.
Exactly. And you talking, Andrea, brought me to mind of Michael John spoke this year.
Oh, yes.
And he was also very moving. But he said more than once that one of the things that brought him his Christmas, what brought him to life again, was the words that came out of your mouth when you helped him open his third eye.
Yeah, he talked about that.
And you told him from this moment forward, your life will never be the same again. And he has held on to that. And boy, oh boy, his life has never been the same. And he has blossomed, and just it's remarkable. So it's that type of thing, the smallest things sometimes that come out of the mouths of the people there, like you and like Jeff and Michael Carter and so many others. It can be the smallest thought that comes through your mind and out your mouth that totally alters somebody's life for the better. And I love that, it's one of the places you can go and say,
yeah,
I believe that God is this man in the sky. And we say, that's beautiful. And someone else walks up and says, I believe God is an alien. And we say, that's beautiful. And then the next person says, I believe God is a rock. That rock right there. Yeah. And you say, that's beautiful. And then the next person says, I'm an atheist. That's beautiful.
That's right.
Because everybody is entitled. We want people to know you're entitled to your own feelings and your own beliefs. And we're not there to tell people what to believe or what to think.
Right.
We're there to support and love and bring that contact for all of them.
I tell people frequently never to second guess your own first instinct. And my first instinct, the first time, then I already knew and loved you and RJ, deeply. But what solidified our bond permanently was sharing our first UFO contact, spending that whole weekend together and, getting, and then when I met Jeff, I think it was year 2, we went downstairs into our little corner in the restaurant near the fireplace, and we were sitting across from each other, I think just having a coffee or a sandwich or something. And I looked up to him and I said, Jeff, would you like to, do a show with me? Like a podcast or something like that? And I mean, within Jeff, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, we created Soul School.
Yeah.
Right.
And the weird thing, and I think I've said this before, is I knew like a big life change was coming for me.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said the words, you'll remember I was
yes, I know what you're going to say. I don't know if Deb and RJ know about this. But
my literal boss from my day job walked through the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
3.5 hours away. Just walking there. I was like,
what is going on?
Yeah, I was like, what?
Am I being tailed or what?
Yeah. And then
You better not take that job.
Yeah. But within a couple of, I don't remember the timeline now, but it was not long after that at all. I literally was offered his position.
2 weeks. It was 2 weeks.
Yeah. It was just kind of this weird thing that happened. And but to me, it represented, okay, things are going up a notch. Things are moving forward. And it was just, I don't know, those little synchronicities that just let you know you're right where you're supposed to be.
Was it really him? Who
It was him and his wife. And I went out and talked to him. No, I was like, hey, what are you guys doing here?
Yeah.
They're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm speaking at a UFO convention. They're like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, I'm having dinner with the lady whose family story is the movie The Conjuring right now. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, this is what I do on the weekends. Yeah. But no, it was just so crazy. It was such a crazy synchronicity that happened. But just, yeah.
That is crazy. I don't think I knew that story.
No.
Yeah. And it was like, there's no reason. They happened to be up north for a sporting event for their kids and decided to have dinner there. And it was right as we were talking, like right when we're in the middle of the conversation about the show, it was all just like these things coming together, which is like these worlds colliding. And I was like, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone here. I feel like I'm dreaming.
Oh, that would have been freaky.
You made contact.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Wow.
I know. I can't believe I never told you that story, Deb, because it blew my mind. I mean, it just blew my mind.
I can see
what are the chances? It's reason enough to go buy a freaking lottery ticket.
Yeah, right. I should have right then and there. We should have went and bought them all up. But
well, all I know is that there is something absolutely magical about that event. And I promise you that I will do everything in my power and in my interaction with the universe and whomever, to whom it may concern, put myself into a place of practicing the presence of my own creation to reunite, to fix whatever ruptured, whatever it was that would allow disease into my holy vessel, into my temple, my big fat fluffy temple. You know what my mantra is? Get the fuck out of my big fat fluffy temple now. And, I'm having pain tonight. I mean, I am. There is a war going on in my body. And I took pain meds before I got on the show tonight because I knew that this is about the time every night where My body temperature goes, if you see me sweating, it's not just because I'm excited because I'm with some of my favorite people on earth. I'm sweating because my body temperature is like a roller coaster ride, up and down, up and down. And, and this is the time, but I'm also able to leave 3D and be in 5D and not have, this affect me to the point where I have to say, I can't do this. Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can. And I am just as defiant. This is an intruder. This is my classroom. We are in soul school and this is my classroom. And I've got something that's intrusive that needs to be expelled. And so it fits right into the lesson, as it were. And this is the ultimate test. There is no more important test than what I'm going through right now. But something brought this to me. And I know that I participated in allowing it to toxify my system. So now we're in the process of detoxifying, chasing it out, making it so afraid that it's looking for the nearest exit, because I feel like little sharp stabbing pains, like there is a battle going on and I have to win this war because we have things to do. I will be there next September in Houghton Lake. And when I come, I'm going to stay for a few days and spend time and gather with my soul and star sisters and brothers. Deb and I are, we don't have dates yet, but sometime hopefully this spring, when my chemo protocol is done and I have a period of respite and I go through all the tests to see what, where I am. I anticipate that there will be a period of time where I can, whisk away up to Michigan, which is really like a second home to me.
Mm-hmm.
I am so happy when I am in Michigan. I just love every square inch of that magnificent state.
And it loves you.
And I think that we need to do what we do, Deb. Absolutely. I'll leave my bowls here. You bring your bowls over to the lakeside, and there will be prayer, and there will be meditation, and there will be conversation and engagement and interaction on a deeply spiritual level where we all unite and make contact again. It doesn't have to be the name of the event. It's the activity of the event that will draw us together. I mean, oh God, Deb, RJ, one post on your page, one post on my page, one post on Jeff's page, and the place will be full. It'll be full. And everyone that goes will be there because they're supposed to be there.
Exactly.
And because they want to be there too.
Yes.
But and we will let everybody know as soon as we know, right?
Yes, as soon as we know. I've like 2 months left of this particular chemo that I'm on, and then we'll run a series of tests and see how the tumors are shrinking. But the one that was in the side of my neck is completely gone. It's gone. The one here is half the size that it was, less than half the size that it was. And that's after 18 days of intensive chemo and 7 days respite.
Right.
It was only a month ago that I started the treatment plan. A month ago.
So it's going great.
I just
You're
want
very determined, and you've taken control of your own healing, and It's so important because your mind and body are working together, and you're allowing spirit and universe and all of that wonderful energy to help you.
Oh, and the
If anybody can do it, you can, for sure.
but I'm so grateful, so humbled by the thousands and thousands of people who are speaking on my behalf to the universe. And, some of them will admit it. I mean, friends of mine, family members, will say, I'm begging, and my response is, you don't need to. You know, when we pray or we meditate or whatever we call it, and however we frame that practice every day or every night or whenever, it's I think that process is different for every single individual, and we just attach names to it. But when I say I'm prayerful, what I'm describing is different than what Jeff does, is different than what you do, is, the healing that you and RJ do with people. That's prayer to me. That's meditation. That's a process of tapping into your own innate integral power of love and putting that together and focusing that energy and reading the body of another, being able to literally color code and see the chakras and what's in balance and what's not. And I know that I am responsible for what has happened to me. And I understand, at least to a point, I am, or it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
But I also truly believe that it is incumbent upon me to heal and to be made whole so that I can offer that comfort, that courage, and that pathway of a multitude of pathways to others. Because there's not one of us that are living and breathing on this planet that don't need to be healed from some burden that we carry, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual. We are all human and we all face tests. And that's the whole premise of Soul School, is that in Soul School, here, now, the test always precedes the lesson. You have to be challenged by the test for you to see what that lesson is. And I was out on the back porch this morning and I just looked up into the sky, and my vessels, the ones that hang closest to me, are always in the north sky, always in the north sky. And all I did was just look up and smile and say, good morning, please join me. And 3 flashes of lights went off in broad daylight, bright blue skies, just one after another, 1, 2, 3, And so when Jeff was talking about the 3, the Trinity, the shape of the vessels, the shape of the pyramids, the whole interactive premise of 3 and the braiding together. Yeah. And I felt that. And then we've both been hit with 333 at 10:03 at 3:03. Yesterday, I had to go fill out some paperwork. That's the number I'm waiting for to come up on the screen, 3:03. And now go to cubicle number 3. I'm like, what the? Really? So I'm on the phone texting. Oh, Jeff, guess what? Guess where I am? Guess what's happening? Here comes that number again.
And I was listening to Cynthia Bourgeau's book called The Holy Trinity and the Law of 3. as you sent it.
At the same time.
And I was just like, I guarantee you it's going to be at 33. It wasn't, but it was just one of those moments. I'm like, it's got to be. No, but
A couple of weeks ago, I was out feeding the birds at 5 a.m, like I always do. And I turned around and looked up. I said, "Where are you?" And all of a sudden, boom, 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 3 flashes just above the store there. So I said, "Thank you."
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
You know, an interesting. No,
go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say an interesting fact, and I think, Deb, I even mentioned this to you when we were chatting at the book table, was I did not know this. Like, I know Communion, I know Whitley Strieber's Communion. Yes. I've not read any of his other works. I had not.
Transformation is phenomenal.
I have it, phenomenal. And I started it. Yeah. But I was listening to Supernatural, which is him and what is it, Jeffrey? I can't remember the name. Jeffrey, it starts with a K. But I was listening to the audiobook of that where Kriples, Jeffrey?
That might be it.
Yeah. He's a religious scholar, and it's kind of a back and forth with them. And in this book, Whitley Strieber says that I didn't know this either, that he's a lifelong student of the work of G.I. Gurdjieff, which is where the concept of the law of 3 comes from. I guess I'm just ignorant. I didn't know that he was a student of the Gurdjieff work, and that in his novel he wrote called The Greys, which I've still yet to read, but it's on my list. He said that there's always 3 beings present in the book that represent the law of 3. First, affirming force, denying force, and the reconciliatory force that is the third force. He said it's present in his work. So I'm just like, isn't it just wild that even this individual who's a vessel through whom, the world's brain was cracked open to this reality, a couple of decades ago, he's hardwired even with law of 3 thinking. And it's just amazing how that all is braided together, whether we know it or not. When you deconstruct it, you find that at the heart of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in our experience, that 3 is amazing in so many ways, and it's always there. But now my mind is going in this context with the other show we do, The Voices of Contact, where we literally work with people who have been regressed. And most of them, and I'm thinking like 99.9999%, like you said earlier, see 3 beings. And it doesn't matter what species or what type of beings they are.
It
it's almost always 3.
Yep.
Yes.
My earliest, yeah.
3 wise men,
Yep. Yeah. My earliest remembered experience was a dream with 3 entities as well. That, again, that experience is actually one of the things that helped my Trinitarian theology as a Christian blossom. And it was an experience of that nature is what it was like in the movie Inception when he spins that top and it just won't, it's an idea that just won't stop. It won't leave you alone. It was like those experiences like that with it's just always been in me. It's what's driven and motivated me, even theologically, is the presence of 3. Like, it's something I've never been able to get over. And it's the difference between binary system and a ternary system, not ternary like me, but ternary in the sense of a 3-part system as opposed to a 2. And I don't mean political systems, but I mean, it's like our whole world is, I don't know about you guys, but everywhere I look, it feels like the fabric of reality. You're starting to see the tear, and it's like every end of the binary is its most exaggerated form, it seems, in some way. And again, I'm not talking even politically, but I just mean everything is like its most exaggerated form. And I'm like, this is terrifying. This is, and everything is amping up. Like, even I was talking to the guy I work with today, who's not a spiritual person at all, but he knows who I am. He knows my history. And he's like, man, do you think this is actually like the end of days or something? And I'm like,
somebody just asked me that the other day,
like,
too.
It's the end of something. I'm like, I don't know if my eschatology is far different from what it used to be, but there are cyclical ends of systems and things, and there will always be something like a cataclysmic, what we call an apocalypse. Apocalypse really just means a revealing or a revelation. That's why the Catholic Bible calls the last book of the Bible Apocalypse, and the Protestant version will call it the Revelation, because the words mean the same thing. It's a revealing. But prior to the end of anything, there will always be this exaggeration of forms, and it's because you're at the edge of the map, and at the edge of the map there'll be monsters, right? When you get to the edge of the map, you start to see the border, and you start to see where the sea is and where the land is, and it's strange, and you see different formations. Whereas when you're deeper inland, you don't see it, or when you're out at sea, you don't see it. But when you start to see the coming together of the two things, you start to see things you've never seen before, and that's how you know you're getting to the end of something. And we are coming to the end of something. What that is, I don't know, but it's
Well, we've always on this planet in the 3D world dealt with binary stuff. Two things: good,
Right.
evil, light, dark.
Light and dark. Yep.
Our evolution is bringing us to this.
Yeah.
There is no more this or that. You just do what you're supposed to do. You're there. There's no more questioning. There's no more trying to figure out what's right or wrong. If you evolve the right way, you know what's right, and you just go that path. And there's no more dualism. There's no more struggling with it. There's no more arguing about it.
Yep.
And that is part of the paradigm shift.
Right.
Exactly.
That is that thing, that series of events. And I think that it really kicked into full gear in 2020. And what do we talk about? 2020 vision, 2020 hindsight,
Right.
clear-eyed, seeing, third eye, 2020.
Exactly.
And COVID, the onset of COVID worldwide, it changed all global civilization.
Right.
If anyone knew about it, they were changed by it.
People had to stop and look in the mirror.
Right. And everyone knew about it, and it leveled the playing field, and we were all equally susceptible, and no one had any immunity. And some people didn't even get the sniffles from it. And some people died. A lot of people died,
Right.
which destabilized us because suddenly we felt so much more vulnerable to something that was invisible, something that could be passed with such ease that you literally didn't know you were exposed until it was too late. And then you had to make your way through that and either survive it or not. And I think that was really the beginning of the full-blown, here you go, paradigm shift, the age of Aquarius, the water bearer.
Yep.
Helene dumped 40 trillion gallons of water on the southeast. 40 trillion gallons of water is what NOAA has estimated came from that storm. And places that had never been flooded before are gone. They are gone, literally wiped off the earth. Yeah. What is it, Jeff? What is it with God and floods? What is it?
Well,
cleansing of the water.
Do you know, even
the
in
destruction of it?
Yeah, when an ancient Mesopotamian worldview, they understood the world as being flat. So the understanding of how the world was constructed would have been that there's waters, right? And when you look out and you see the sky, to them that was water that was underneath a clear dome, essentially. And so, like in the Enuma Elish, for example, there is this primeval saltwater entity called Tiamat. Apsu is the freshwater entity, which is her husband. And there's a separation kind of made between the two of those: underworld, outer world, the heavens, and then the earth is the disk in between. The Noah story, or the Genesis story, uses that same cosmology, where God separates the waters one from another on the second day of creation, which, by the way, second day of creation in the Bible is the only day that God does not say is good. All other days, God says it's good. Why? Because on the second day, that's when the monad, the one, is divided into two. That's when the unity becomes multiplicity. And at first, the dividing of the monad will always look negative because it looks like division. However, once you get to the end of it and you see how it all works together, God says, oh, it's very good. So it takes a process for you to see how the division is actually working in your favor. But anyways, long story short, creation is the waters being divided and earth established in between. When the flood happens in later on in Genesis, it says that the windows of heaven are open and the fountains of the great deep burst forth. So the waters that were thought to be on either side of the disc, in this way of thinking, come back in and collapse on the disc in between and wipe the whole thing out. And so when the waters recede, it's literally like new creation. So anytime there's flood is a symbol for clearing of the board and new creation.
Cleansing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Deb, what were you going to say, honey? I can almost hear you thinking.
Oh my gosh. I get so into when Jeff is talking, I'm so there that I don't have a clue. But he does the same thing when he gets on stage.
Yeah.
He opens your mind and he really makes you think. And that's exactly what he was doing. So I don't know if I was going to say something or not. I was very into.
Yeah, have you read The Epic of Humanity, Jeff?
Is it a modern work or what?
It just came out about 3 months ago.
I have not. No.
Check that one out.
Okay. Yeah. And then, another interesting thing. I'm thinking, I don't know if you're familiar with Julian Jaynes' theory of the breakdown of the bicameral mind.
Mm-hmm.
But in his idea, the right and left hemispheres of the brain weren't connected by the corpus callosum, which is the fibers that connect the two hemispheres.
So that we can use both hands at the same time,
exactly.
Yeah.
Because the two hemispheres are almost different entities. They really kind of are.
And they have two separate functions.
They do.
And if they're not able to connect through synapses to speak to each other, we would literally be dysfunctional as vessels.
Yep.
Literally dysfunctional. Like there would be no point in having a brain.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. If you're split like that. So he read the Odyssey and he noticed that there really isn't there isn't what we would call consciousness present in the Odyssey, because you never have individuals like thinking to themselves, oh, I'm going to go over here. It's always a God saying to them, go over here or do this, that, or the other. Mm-hmm. So it's never them coming up with a thought. It's always a voice speaking to them. And so he's looking
they follow directions.
Exactly.
That's it. They're not the creator of the direction.
Exactly. So his theory is that there was no corpus callosum yet, and it was the two hemispheres of the brain communicating, but it communicated in such a way that one hemisphere would hear the other hemisphere as though it were a literal voice in the head, maybe the way like a schizophrenic individual would literally hear an actual voice, because that's the way they weren't integrated together. And so the corpus callosum forms to like cause there to be an integration. So now you don't say left brain, right brain, you say brain, because these fibers, this bridge, this corpus callosum makes a braid, right, out of the two forces. And I don't know why that came to me as
I love this.
Because he's a brainiac. That's
he
why.
Is a brainiac. But
he froze right there.
I love this. He froze right there.
Frozen brainiac.
He has my mind going crazy. And I'm thinking, he's talking about the two hemispheres. And, when we do chakra work, like when we're going to balance and open the third eye and the crown chakra, I visualize those two hemispheres coming together, because if they don't make that contact, if they don't act as one, nothing is going to work properly. Mm-hmm. So this is making like perfect sense to me, and I never knew why. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Why I had that visualization when I do that work. Now I get it.
And what's located right in the middle of all that? Our third eye, our pineal gland.
Yeah, the pineal gland. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And that's what makes, exactly.
That's where you travel without moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and it came in very handy for me too, because I really needed to hop on out of 3D during all the biopsies.
Right.
I have never in my lifetime had, that kind of an experience. I have one scar on my body, on my wrist, from when I was a 10-year-old playing football with a bunch of big guys, and I had a chipped bone and a ganglion cyst removed when I was 10 years old. And
Was that the
until I was
Patriots?
65, nothing. Okay. Like perfectly healthy, nothing. And then this. So I had to leave. I had to, and basically, I was just so grateful as I was laying there on the table thinking, I know how to do this. I can, and I had several people, and I just hovered above and just watched and felt nothing. It's really an excellent thing to add to anyone's skill set.
Yeah.
But I also found over the weekend that I made myself completely available for. I told Deb and Lenny and anybody, if somebody wants to talk to me, keep me on speed dial. I will be free for the whole weekend. And a number of people contacted me that were there, no pun intended, and said, you've been seen in the building. You've been seen in the building. And I realized that years and years of astral projecting came in really, really handy that weekend because I so wanted to feel like I was there and surrounded by all these loving entities that, and selfishly, honestly, because I feel like I felt like that would have aided me in my own process, in my own healing process. And I just desperately wanted to be in your physical presence. So I did the next best thing. I went there in mind. And I have 3 separate messages in my text messages. I'm at Houghton Lake. I just saw you in the lobby. I just saw you standing out looking over the lake. I saw you. You were here. And then I turned around and you were gone. And, I thought to myself, isn't that exactly the same as being a ghost? Isn't it exactly the same?
Absolutely.
Just hopping dimensions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your energy doesn't die; it's still there.
No.
Yeah, and many of the great saints were known for bilocation. Padre Pio is a great example. He was frequently seen in 2 places at the same time. I knew of a minister. He's dead now, and he wasn't my favorite person, but the guy undeniably had a lot of supernatural things follow him around. But there was an event witnessed by a crowd of about 1,500 people where he was present at a conference, got up, was called up on stage by the host of the conference to address the crowd. He was going to be speaking the next day and just say hi. 1,500 some people saw this. He was at the airport. His flight had gotten delayed, and he was literally at the airport and could prove it. And he got up in front of an auditorium full of 1,500 some odd people and addressed them. All 1,500 people saw him and also witnessed talking to him in the hallway afterwards. It's like, and he was there. He wanted to be there. He was heartbroken that his flight was canceled. It's like, what? It's like, you're not confined to the shell that the eyes see. And I don't even want to insult it by calling it a shell because I'm not a Gnostic in that sense. I think the body's as sacred as the spirit, but you're not simply confined to the form that my eyes see. We're constantly blinking in and out of existence, vibrating at such a high rate we look like we're solid. But where are we that other moment of the blink, right? I mean,
right.
There's a story about Buddha was on the side of the river, and many people were there. And next thing you know, he's on the other side of the river waving at him. Then boom, he's back there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Can't explain it, but it happens.
and it does. And it does happen. And that's it's sharing experiences and stories like this that I think give people faith and hope. My dear Carlene, my father's partner in life, the earth angel woman, oh God, she's amazing. She sends me a prayer every morning. And it was yesterday or today that it was a prayer about the reality of me is that I am, and we all are, essentially spirit. We're having an earthly vessel experience now, but we are basically spirit. And so if you want your body to heal, then go into spirit realm where you are already purified, where you are already healed, where you are already perfect.
Yep.
And go there and let the vessel do what the vessel will do, but return to source is really what the prayers are about. And in this way, Carlene and I connect in a profound way because she totally gets it. She totally does. And we can talk to each other with just a few words and know exactly what the crux of the matter is. And so I have been really thinking about that lately. I think that I do dwell in spirit a great deal. I think that's why I can connect with the dead. Well, why I was able to grow up at the farmhouse and see all the different spirits that were around. See the one that walked into this front room when I was writing the books and peeked in and looked at me and I was like, well, hello. I mean, it looked absolutely solid, flesh and blood to me. Not because she was in my dimension, but I was in hers. And that's why I could see her and feel her presence the way that I did. And one of the things that is so spectacular about contact, about this event, is that as we're talking about our galactic family, about the extraterrestrials that are living, sentient, prescient beings that are circumnavigating this globe in numbers that none of us can wrap our heads around. And yet we know that they are here because we know them, because we've seen them, because in some cases have traveled with them. In some cases, we have a relationship with them. And so, I titled tonight's show because this is where I wanted to go with this tonight. To whom it may concern, dear universe, oh great spirit, God, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, all the saints, all the sinners, all the incorruptibles, our galactic family. That's my travel prayer. Everybody get in the car. We're all going for a ride. They don't have to stop at every restroom. They don't eat. They're just there. It is a presence of energy and spirituality. And I swear to you, before the storm hit us, I did the prayer and the dome of protection over this house. And we didn't lose a shingle. We had 18 to 20 inches of rain. We had 85-mile-an-hour winds. We didn't lose a shingle. We had a few twigs down in the backyard with 200-year-old trees hovering like a monster over this house. This could have been a disaster for us. And so I believe in the dome of protection that we routinely put over each other, like I did this afternoon, Deb, when you're like, oh, you know what, RJ and I or it's this morning, I think it was early this morning that we talked, and you said you're going on the road, and I'm like, boom, done, dome of protection.
Right.
Because that's what some people call, all right, I'm going to get a little spooky. It's the spooky season. It is my month after all.
Absolutely.
Magic is science we don't yet understand. Magic is, I think, the manipulation of the creative energy of the universe, learning how to shape it, to mold it, to use it in the same way that I used my ability to jump into 5D during an extremely stressful invasion of my body with scalpels and needles that I didn't want to feel and I didn't want to see. I didn't want to be touched by. It was all so surreal that I had to leave my 3D reality to be able to cope with it.
Right.
And that's where I went, to my safe place. And that's where I went when I was seen standing on the shore of Houghton Lake, seen by several very lucid, intelligent individuals that wanted to walk up to me and say, oh my God, I can't believe you made it. And there was nothing for them to wrap their arms around because I was gone. But I was there.
But you were there, even when they weren't seeing you, but you were seen often, and especially while we were doing the healing circles. And at one point, Andrea, while we were on the phone, you instructed me to kiss everybody on the forehead, as
Yes.
you would. And so I did. I made the circle and I was embracing people and kissing their forehead. And so many people said to me, I could feel Andrea. She is you. So you were there. Your soul was there. We were sharing this body.
Yes.
I had no doubt. And with everything going on, Jeff was talking about, people are saying, is this the end?
No, it's the beginning.
Right. This
It's
is
the transformation
of the third dimensional thinking being, that's why we're seeing more, we're feeling more, we're able to travel more on a soul level, because we are entering the age of Aquarius. We have entered.
We have entered.
Now adapting to the fourth and fifth dimension, where it's more loving and it's easier to see what we're intertwined with, which is everything.
And we get to set that example. Jeff and I do with this show, I do with you when we do our shows together. What we get to share with our viewers is so compelling and it's so interesting. And I don't know if you know this, and I'm sure the same thing happens with you and RJ, and Jeff too, that, once the show is over, my phone already is ding, ding. I've got the volume turned down. But I've already got, I don't know how many messages. I will be answering messages probably till midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, because either you or RJ or Jeff or I said something, even if it was just one sentence, that happens. And that's all part of our spiritual evolution. The awakening, the enlightenment, the paradigm shift. All is happening together.
Yeah. And if I may too, when you're talking about the archetypes of the Piscean age moving into the Aquarian age.
Yes.
The Piscean age obviously represents
duality.
Fish, right? So you have duality, binary. The water carrier is a male doing what is traditionally
a female's
work of carrying water. So you have the binaries of the Piscean, and then you have the coming together. This new thing emerges in the symbol of the archetype of the Aquarian. So again, it's two forces, some kind of third force entering in, which I think is love, and you can call it many different things, which is what joins the thing.
Call it glue.
Something new.
Call it glue.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing.
And the other thing I wanted to say is in honoring the title of the show, To Whom It May Concern, because we've covered a lot of ground tonight. We've talked a little Christianity, we've talked a little ufology, we've talked mysticism, we've talked. To whom it may concern, what's the name? What's in a name? Well, I don't really think it matters. How do you start off the Tao Te Ching? The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao, right? That's how it starts. The thing, if you can name it, it's not the thing. In Judaism, the Tetragrammaton, the Yad He Vod He, the name Yahweh, there are no vowels in the words, right? For one, it's YHWH to us. But that word was not to be spoken except by the high priest, and even then only once a year on the Day of Atonement. But the symbolism there of not being able to say the name of God is that you can't lasso and hog tie the ineffable in consonants and vowels. You can't grab it and pin it to a cork board and say there it is. If you can say there it is, it's not there.
Not there.
Right? And then even when you look at it like the Christian symbolism, then well, people think that Christ is kind of a constraint on that notion of God, but it's really not, because Yahweh was an unspeakable name, whereas Yeshua or Jesus was a name that you couldn't not speak if you lived in the ancient world, because if you threw a rock in a crowded room of 4, you might hit 5 Yeshuas, right? I mean, because that was a very common name. So like the symbolism there is we're being told that this being who can't be named is now manifested in a life that you can't not name, because it's every name essentially, right? So that's
you can't say it's there because it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. So you go from it being unspeakable to where it's like almost intangible to where now it's tangible, but it's tangibly everywhere because it names
is
itself
present in the truest sense of the word.
It names itself everything. That's what Father Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan spiritual teacher, says, that Christ is simply another word for everything, right? It's another way of saying the word everything. And I think that's exactly it. And we have various models that we all work with. You might work with a more holistic New Age spirituality. You might work more with Orthodox Christianity and mysticism. You might work more, again, in whatever. You name the tradition. You might deal more in a kind of Blavatskyan, theosophic, everything, everywhere, all at once spirituality. And
great movie, by the way.
That is a great movie, yeah. But the point is, you have to have some kind of model and able to work with the unseen, as long as at the end of the day you're willing to concede to the fact that this name is just here so that I can work with the thing that I can't really get my hands around. It's like the atom doesn't look like what was in your science books. The atom doesn't look like a couple squiggly lines and a colorful balls in the middle, but that model actually gives us enough to where we could potentially destroy the world. I mean, there's enough power in engaging that symbol that we actually can engage with something unseen. And it's
interesting that you should bring that up. Interesting that you should bring that up. I spent a good deal of time today thinking about the fact that the scientific technology that created the atom, the atomic bomb, the discovery of radiation is the same thing, the toxic poison that is killing a disease that is riddled through my body. The same thing that can claim life can restore life. But at its core, at its seed, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the law of polarity, I suppose.
Yeah. And also, before we lose RJ, because we're running out of time quickly, and how fast did this 2 hours go? RJ is a master numerologist. I don't know if he spreads that out around, but I just told the whole freaking world.
Yes.
Well, I learned from one of the best.
Yes, I know you did. And when you have a chance, RJ, I know you're very busy. It's the spooky season, and but my mother passed away on 6/12/24, which speaks to me some way. And Jeff and I speak to each other. Bill said 5 minutes, so Jeff and I speak to each other in numbers, and also Deb and I speak light language. We are able to decipher. I can read crop circles. I mean, these are that we have an expanding skill set. Numbers, math is like the universal language. You know, it's the same. It's consistently the same no matter what, no matter where, which is why binary code is factored into a lot of the crop circles. That it's a way for them to communicate with us. And when you let your mind go there, when you stop being pragmatic and using the separate lobes to do separate functions, but bring it all together and understand that from two is one, and from one is access into the coding and the numbers. So Deb and RJ, I need to bring you back, and we're going to do an entire show about numerology, because that's part, I believe, of our advancement, our understanding of who we are, why we're here, where we come from, where we're going, and what is our purpose here. And so if we are able to work together to expand a greater understanding and acknowledgement of a skill set for communication, I personally believe that most communication is telepathic. How many times have you picked up the phone to call someone and it rings, and it's usually me, huh, Deb? Because you were just about to call me and there I am.
We do that a lot.
Spoke here before we spoke here.
Right. Absolutely.
So
Your mother moved on an 8-day, which is infinity,
Mhm.
and it's very successful and accomplishing a lot. So she's letting you know that a lot was accomplished, and she's
busy.
forever there.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Mm.
I feel that about her. And she's around me all the time. I don't really have time or even the inclination to mourn her. I feel like I did the vast majority of my mourning quietly and discreetly in her presence, and while she was still with me. And now she's here to help me.
Yeah. And 8 is also the number of manifestations. So whatever you put your mind to, and you know this, you
Yes.
can manifest it.
Yes. And I'm busy doing that right now.
Right.
So we're out of time. And, Bill's so mean like that. He's like, what? Bill, what are you doing? Do you have to run some commercials or something? We endorse whatever you're selling. That's fine. God, I love you, man. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Love you guys too.
It's been a great show. A great show.
And have a great weekend to everybody that's watching.
Oh, you too.
Yeah.
All
All right,
of
man.
you.
And hopefully we'll all be back next week.
Yes. And thank you, everyone who's out there that's, come together in Soul School in this wonderful classroom tonight. All of you. I love you all. Namaste with all my heart.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure, truly. Our pleasure. And with that, shall we just say good evening and class dismissed.